I call this the know your numbers feedback loop. Framing the problem or the situation is we, at one point or another in our own journeys, we eventually got a lead that was our biggest job yet, that we were nervous about bidding, weren't sure if we knew how to calculate how many man hours it was going to take, crunching all the numbers, trying to be sure that we get the right price. And we arrive at this moment where we're trying to send off the bid or present the bid to the customer, and we're shaking in our shoes and full of self-doubt. That's the mental state that we're in. Probably most of us have hit one or more or all of these items in an effort to overcome that. What it feels like is we're reinventing the wheel for every quote. I'm the only person in the whole business that can quote this job, and I'm too busy. It's going to be next week till I can get to it. The lack of confidence ends up allowing the client to negotiate with us on that price. We submit a bid for 50 grand. They tell us I got 45. I need the work, and I cave and I say, yeah, sure. And I just gave away all my profit. End result, the classic owner-operator contractor problem is you work your tail off. Your clients love you. Everyone around you respects you for your hard work. Instagram loves you, but your bank account doesn't show the results. That's the kind of the default path of contractors in North America. The solution is to literally build a budget, which is a fancy geeky term to just say, plug all your expenses into this sheet and get all your pricing back out. Your man-hour rate, your overhead recovery, your profit margin markups. When you do that, it produces that rock solid confidence in every quote. There's no more underselling yourself. When it comes to screwing it up and not earning a profit in your business, you did the job right. That's a given, but you still didn't make any money. It rolls up to these two methods. You can either get the math wrong and your pricing is messed up, or you can have the math perfect, but you can still get it wrong by missing the mark on production capacity or output. Meaning my math is dialed, but if I bid a job at 100 hours and it takes me 150, I still lost money. It doesn't matter how perfect that math was. You can make a budget, say whatever you want to say. So you have to track to know when you're missing the mark on production capacity on an individual job, which rolls up to missing the mark on your overall budget projection for the whole year. This is the know your numbers flywheel. This is like the project life cycle. What you need to do is build a budget, which is entering your costs in so you know what you need to charge to be profitable and cover all of your costs, both direct and overhead. Now you can build an estimate for an actual job based on the math coming from that budget, and you get an estimate that's priced profitably based on your budget. SynkedUP automates all that stuff, so you can just do inputs, and it spits out the magic math for you. There's even free tools on SynkedUP's website that you can get and do this manually for free. Skip right on over to tracking time and materials per job. I have to track time and materials so that I know if I screwed up my estimate based on how many hours it's going to take or how much product it's going to take. If I consistently underbid my projects and the estimate, but I never track and I never know it, I can live in a situation where I have a budget, I'm pricing my jobs based on that budget, but then I don't make any money and I can't figure out why. Do build a budget, get a profitable estimate. Do track your time, get accurate job costing. Job costing is essentially the act of comparing your estimated hours and expenses to your actual hours and expenses, so you can essentially score your original estimate. Where did I go wrong? Where did I go right? So many times a project has 5 or 6 different work areas and you nail it on 4 out of the 6, but you screw it up on 2 out of the 6. The $1 million question is, where did I go wrong? When you can answer that question definitively in real time, this is a key part, real time, then you can actually alter your behavior or your estimating for the next job in your sales pipeline. And the very next estimate you send out the door is taking your most recent historical data, correcting it, altering it. You're always optimizing so that the next estimate out the door is priced as accurately and as profitably as possible. Do track time, get actual job costing in real time. And if you get this spun up, where every job is running through this cycle, it's kind of impossible to screw up and not know why. That's what SynkedUP was built to do. That's the philosophy. This is building a budget inside of SynkedUP where you literally just plug in all of your labor, materials, equipment, subs, and overhead, and then you plug in your desired net profit margin, and then it tells you, okay, well, you'd have to, in this hypothetical mock-up, sell $970,000 worth of work to achieve that, to cover all of your costs, your direct costs, and your overhead costs, and pay you a salary that you deserve, and still make a 20% net profit. This is what it has to be. This is how it pans out. If I go in there and I fiddle with this desired net profit margin and I move it to 25% or 15%, the sales number will change. And that budget then gives you the ability to do an estimate established on your costs, not what you think you're worth, your costs. The system knows my cost of every product that's in this bid. It's marking it up based on my overhead to find my break even. And then it's adding my net profit to find my total customer price. The number here, the 12,000, that's my break even. The 15,700, That's my profitable price. Notice this break-even column where it's taking my $8.58 per square foot paver and my break-even is $10.30. That $10.30 is different for every one of you. Every one of you's overhead expenses are slightly different. Even my own change. My insurance went up by 20%. So I go into SynkedUP, I tweak that number, bam, my break-even is now probably going to be like $10.37. It syncs in real time based on the numbers I have in there. You can keep your budget up to date on daily, weekly, monthly basis, and every bid that's going out your doors is priced for profit based on today's numbers. Every dollar your business spends that's not in the budget, what was supposed to be your profit, goes to pay for it. The job costing piece, this is after the job is done or even in real time while the job is being done. Notice the red, green, and yellow bars there at the bottom half of the screen. On the entire job, it looks like I nailed it. I bid 216 hours, and just by sheer luck, I got in at 215.9 hours. It looks like I absolutely nailed it, but there is a treasure trove of data underneath that. As you can see, I really screwed up on that 150 square foot raised patio area, but I did amazing on the dining area, and I screwed up again on the fire pit and bench, but I did amazing on the water feature. The lesson here is if I had sold a job with just that 150 square foot raised patio area, I would have wildly lost money. It's the work areas that I performed ahead of budget in the green that paid for my gap on the job, on the parts of the job that I went over hours or over budget on in products. Job costing has multiple outputs of value. One is knowing if you made money or not, if you went over hours or not, but then that should translate into your production numbers. For instance, that 150 square foot patio that I did that took me 62 hours instead of 40, my production number for a 150 square foot raised patio gave me 40 hours. That means 3.75 square feet per man hour of production. It actually took me those 62 hours, which is 2.4 square feet of production per man hour. So job costing gives you that insight as well. What is my true production? Production rates are what I would say once you've got the flywheel of budgeting and job costing up, now I'm focusing my energy on building production rates because production rates take the magic that's in your head from years and years of doing it out of your head and into a repeatable system and process. It basically allows someone that can read off of a measurement, plug a measurement in to build an accurate estimate just as accurately as you do. Production rates are key. It's another value that's produced by tracking time on every job.
Are there symptoms to a business of when a business should maybe switch from a single overhead recovery to a multiple overhead recovery?
The North Star in how you should think about your overhead recovery, the principle is you should anchor your overhead recovery to your most predictable direct expenses. For most people, that's labor. But if you're a subcontractor model, labor is kind of maybe or maybe not. Maybe subcontractors is my most predictable overhead expense. The idea is whatever is my most predictable direct costs, labor, materials, subs, should bear the burden of recovering my overhead. The reason it needs to be the most consistent or the most predictable is because if I anchor my overhead recovery to something that can swing wildly, for some reason in 1 year I spent $600,000 on materials and the next year just the type of my jobs I only spent $200,000. If my overhead recovery is tied to materials in that model, I probably generated far more overhead dollars than I needed 1 year and not nearly enough the second. And for most companies, labor is the most consistent and predictable expense that you can anchor your overhead recovery to so that you proportionally recover the correct amount of overhead. And your pricing is not too high or too low because it proportionally swung one way or the other. And the other thing I like about doing it on labor is labor represents a span of time. 4 guys work 1,500 hours a year, 6,000 billable hours. It represents a span of time. And not only is it anchoring your overhead recovery to a direct cost or expense, but inherently also a span of time because these overhead expenses that are in my budget are hypothetically for a year. And I need to recover those overhead expenses in exactly a year. I always default to recovering overhead on labor unless there's a compelling reason to do otherwise. If anybody wants to continue the conversation or has a problem they're trying to solve or an answer they're trying to fish for, just shoot me a message on Instagram. Or if you want to know more about SynkedUP, shoot me an Instagram message. We'll get you connected to whatever solution you need or resource you need to solve whatever problem you're facing.